Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen here very quickly. Let me know if you can see it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay,
I see it.
perfect. So very quickly going through the issue here. Essentially, there is when we open the media gallery here. So the problem was when we were open the Adobe stock grid, some of the images that were licensed didn't have this license flag here. And the reason for that was basically there is a request that happens when you open the grid. And essentially, it's on this component here. So we are listening to the data provider for that grid. And whenever that grid gets updated, we update the license. So this function basically does a request to the backend to get information about the items that are being displayed on the grid. And the reason why these labels weren't being updated or being displayed actually was essentially because we were running this request here, which is the data provider request, which returns the records that are being displayed on the grid. So this updates that object that we are listening. So what happens is this function gets triggered, but the problem was that we were getting the IDs here for the request. We were not getting the information from the data provider. We were getting the information from the Masonry component. And I think it's mostly like a timing issue here. So sometimes I was testing and it was working, sometimes weren't working. So essentially the Mansory component also is attached to the data provider, but we were, in this component specifically, we were listening to the data provider and getting the data from another component. So there was timing issue there. So in order to fix the problem, I essentially changed the way that we fetch the items. So instead of getting from the component, the rows from the component, I get from the data provider, which is the object that we are listening to. And it fixed. So the request, when it was getting from the Mansory, the request was working, but the items on the request were empty. So these IDs were empty. So that's how I figured out that you had to get the data from the provider since we are listening from that. So if we just go very quickly here, yeah, let me just listen again. It's going to be easy to demo what happens in the JavaScript. Cool. So if we go to the network, we can see that this request is happening. So we are updating, data provider is being called and updating the content of the roles. So this gets triggered, and at this point, we do have the items. And when we were getting from the Mansory grid, these items was an empty array. So as a consequence, the information is always it's always working and it's always displaying the correct information there. That's it.
Okay, looks good. Thanks, Gabriel. Just have the comment, some suggestion of the small optimization in the code. Can you show the actual code of the pull request?
Sure. 1 second. Here. Can you see it?
Yes. Yes. So here we are using the provider only for that purpose of assessing the items, right?
Yes.
I just think that if we need only the items, probably we can assess only the items, like import only the items.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, instead of modules, agree. Yeah.
It will just limit the scope of responsibility, the dependency a bit. So
Yeah.
that can be done exactly like it's done in the example that you showed with update licensed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Gonna update. That makes sense. Agree. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Otherwise, cool. Thank you very much. The
No
first
problem.
demo today.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel.
Cheers. Thanks.